All right, your generic flower. Let me first introduce my flower model here. We're going to look at it briefly now and then use it kind of like a little quiz at the end. But a flower has a base. We're going to write the names of these parts up here in just a minute, but it has a base. To that base, 4 circles or whorls of parts are attached. 4 circles of parts or whorls, W-H-O-R-L-S, 4 whorls of parts. The outside whorl is represented by these green things here. That's the outside whorl. The next one in toward the center is represented by these pink things here. Then the next, as we go into the center, we have these. These are the male parts of the flower, and then in the center is the female part of the flower. So we got these green things, we've got the pink things, we've got these male parts, and we got this female part. And so let's write some things up here. This diagram, by the way, will be worth 5 points on test 4. Ooh, okay, let's check it out. First of all, a flower has a base. A flower has a base to which all parts are attached. All 4 sets of parts, all 4 circles or whorls of parts, and that base is called the receptacle. The receptacle. And so, what is the outside circle of parts? The outside circle of parts, which I will represent like this. The outside circle of parts is a circle of sepals. Sepals. And what is the function of sepals in a flower? Well, when the bud's still closed up and kind of tiny, the sepals are on the outside, totally covering it. And so, sepals protect the unopened bud. They protect the unopened bud. Alright, so that's the sepals. That's the first set of parts. Let's change colors and get the next circle of parts. How about red? Okay, that'll work. Probably should have used green for that first one, but our second circle of parts as we go toward the center would be a circle of petals. These represent petals. And what is the function of pretty petals? The function of pretty petals is to attract pollinators. Attract pollinators. And so, what about ugly petals? Well, you know, maybe they're not trying to attract pollinators. Some flowers, not sunflowers, but some flowers, some types of flowers, don't even have petals. I guess they could care less about pollinators, right? All right, petals. So we have a circle of sepals and then a circle of petals. What's the next thing as we go toward the inside? Well, let's change colors again. The next circles we move toward the middle. Wow, those are some lopsided petals, aren't they? Oh well. The next circle is a circle of male parts. I'll put one here and one over there. And what are these? Well, these have a couple of named parts. The top part is called the anther. The anther. The stalk that holds it up is called the filament. And together, the anther and filament are called what? The stamen. The anther and filament are called the stamen. And so these are the male parts of a flower. Well, what is formed inside an anther? What is formed inside an anther is pollen. Pollen. And so there's a question on your study question that says, how many chambers or sacs does an anther have? We'll catch that when we look at the flower model again when we're done with this. Alright, so anther, filament, stamen, they comprise the stamen. Pollen, there must be something male about pollen, is that right? I guess so. Alright, what color shall we do for the final inner circle? And you say, well, on that model or on the book diagram, that doesn't look like a circle, it looks like one piece. Well, it is kind of a circle of fused parts. Yeah, they're all joined together, kind of a circle of fused parts joined together. And so this is the female part of the flower, and we can kind of represent that like this. And So the female part of the flower, the entire thing has a couple names. The name in your book is carpel. And so I don't like that name too well because a carpel usually refers to a part of the female part and not the whole thing, but we'll let that slide. We'll call it a carpel. The carpel has three named parts. Up at the top, there's a part to which pollen sticks, and so the term for that kind of sounds like sticky a little bit. This is the stigma, and this part in the middle, this more slender part in the middle, is called the style. Oops, didn't spell that right. Let's see. Style, S-T-Y-L-E, and this bulgy part at the bottom is called the ovary. And so the carpel, I will probably call it a more familiar term, a term I grew up with. I think it's a more appropriate term. If I call it pistil, that's what I'm talking about. P-I-S-T-I-L. Having a little trouble with my writing today. So, P-I-S-T-I-L. And that actually comes from its shape. The druggists have a grinding, kind of a bowl with a grinding device in it. What's that called? Mortar and pestle? Well, pistil is pestle in French, and somebody saw this shape. Oh, it looks like a pestle. And so it's been called a pistil for a long time. Lately you see books calling it a carpel. But we'll call it a carpel or pistil. And inside the ovary there are little round things called what? Little round things called ovules. And so what becomes what if all goes well for this flower? What becomes what? And here it is. An ovule, can you see that? That's not very good. Let's try another color. An ovule, let's retire that particular marker. Let's go with purple. Here we go. An ovule, if all goes well, an ovule develops into a seed. One ovule becomes one seed. An ovule. So these ovules, if all goes well for this flower, ovules develop into seeds. What about the surrounding ovary? The surrounding ovary develops into the fruit. And so, fruit, we'll see, is more general than something you can eat. A lot of fruit is totally inedible by anything, but it has an important function, as we will see. But technically speaking, a fruit is anything that develops from a flower ovary. Now, some fruits develop only from the flower ovary, some from the ovary plus some other flower parts, but at least the ovary is involved. So we'll just say whatever the ovary develops into is by definition a fruit. Alright, so there we have it. This diagram is worth how many points on test 4? 5 points. Let's go over those parts with our model here. What's the base of the flower called? The what? The receptacle. What's this outside circle of parts called? It's called, they're called a circle of what? Sepals. What's the function of a sepal? It's on the board right there. I can see it. It's to protect the unopened bud before it opens up. The next circle in toward the middle is a circle of what? Circle of petals. What's the function of pretty petals anyway? To attract pollinators. What's the next circle as we go toward the middle? It's these male parts. What does this represent up here? An anther. What's this? Filament. What's the whole thing? A stamen. And how many sacs does an anther have? Well, can you see it right there? Let's bring that up toward the camera. Yes, you can see that. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 sacs. Anthers have 4 sacs. Yes, they do. And so, that's the male part. Anther plus filament equals stamen. And then we have the female part here. Now the whole thing is called a carpel or a pistil, right? Carpel or pistil. And what's the top part up here called? Stigma. What's this thinner part called? Style. What's this called? Ovary. What develops inside the ovary? Ovules. Ovules. What becomes what if all goes well for a flower? The ovules develop into what? Into seeds. And the ovary develops into what? The fruit. So ovules inside the ovary develop into seeds inside the fruit. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Your basic flower, your basic generic flower.